They thought they'd caught just another small-time crook, until the man walked into court dressed like he owned the place. That morning, officers Brent Halcroft and Lynn Mercer got a call about a man in his mid-30s wearing a navy jacket, suspected of breaking into a car on Madison Avenue. The two cops, coffee in hand, weren't expecting much. But then Brent spotted him outside the Grange Bakehouse, calm, focused, croissant in hand, scrolling his phone. Brent pulled up fast, no lights or sirens. Lynn hit the pavement like a pro. "Hands where I can see 'em," she barked. Kenton Miro looked up, startled, but composed. Brent accused him of being the suspect. Kenton insisted he was just waiting for his ride. Brent didn't buy it. He grabbed Kenton, spun him around, yelling, "Resisting!" The crowd gathered, phones recording. Kenton didn't resist, just stared at the pavement as cuffs closed in. Lynn smirked. They always get mouthy until the cuffs click. No rights, no ID, no receipt check. They tossed him in the cruiser, already laughing about the paperwork. Kenton silent until he said, "I want my phone call." Brent made a face. "You'll get your call after booking." But Kenton's calm, patient tone threw a wrench in their usual routine, making Brent glance back at him through the mirror. Kenton wasn't scared, rattled, or rattling. He was just waiting. Booking was slow. Desk officer Rob Tesh blinked when he saw Kenton come in. "You sure about this one?" Brent said. "Fits the call. Car break-in suspect hanging outside a bakery with a pastry bag." Kenton quietly asked, "I want my call now." Lynn jumped in. "Doubting the field call, Rob?" Rob paused, took Kenton's info, then did a double take at the screen. Kenton repeated, "Attorney General's office." Brent raised an eyebrow. "Lawyer?" Kenton shook his head. Brent laughed it off. "Tell him we said hi." Rob stayed silent, staring at the screen. And that's when everything started to shift. Kenton got his call. Quick, precise. No fumbling, no scrolling, just dialed. "Morrow here. Boise PD, Madison Avenue break-in. Need files by afternoon." Then hung up. No fuss. The call was under 30 seconds, but that was all it took. Later, the precinct chief received a discreet email from the state civil oversight team. An urgent flagged order to release Kenton immediately. Attached were credentials, federal profiles, and a legal audit notice under Article 14 of the State Law Enforcement Integrity Act. No lawyer. Straight from the AG's liaison. Within 45 minutes, Kenton was free, walking down the hall, not cuffed, no doors, calm as ever, with two suited state officials. Brent blinked. "No way." Lynn glared. "What's going on?" Rob Tesh watched from his desk, silent, typing into a secret system. Kenton didn't look back or react, just left with his steady stride. The silence after him was louder than any alarm. That night, Brent ranted at dinner, calling it political favoritism. Lynn, on her porch with a beer, guessed City Hall got involved and said Kenton would get busted eventually. Nobody's that smooth without a secret. Rumors spread fast. During briefing, Kenton's name got dropped and sergeants exchanged knowing glances. One officer said Kenton used to work for a watchdog in Oakland. Even Captain Rolstad got tense. Short answers, cautious wording. Brent was spooked. If command was nervous, the story was way bigger. Something big was unfolding. Lynn brushed it off. "We got body cam, call logs, protocol nailed." Brent nodded, but it was forced. His gut twisted. Kenton wasn't adding up, not in any way they expected. Walking away calm. No drama? That's not how guilt acts. Still, they went back to the grind like nothing changed. But truth moves faster than cops. By the time the floor started shifting, Kenton was already higher up, watching. Boise's courthouse wasn't fancy, just concrete steps, glass doors, and echoes down wide hallways. Brent and Lynn walked in, sharp in pressed uniforms and polished badges. No smiles. Routine. They'd done court more times than they could count. Charge: obstructing investigation of a stolen car. They expected Kenton late, lawyer in tow, maybe causing a scene. But Kenton wasn't outside, not in waiting, not on the docket. Gone. At security, a bailiff gave a stiff nod. "You're testifying in courtroom 2C?" Brent said, "Yeah, Halcroft and Mercer." "This Morrow case?" Bailiff blinked. "Morrow's not the defendant." Brent frowned. "Wait, what?" Bailiff just pointed. "You'll see." In 2C, everything was wrong. Not chaos, just off. Room packed, not with nervous defendants, but journalists, camera crews, and a city council rep. Brent's neck stiffened when he locked eyes on the front table. There was Kenton Morrow. No cuffs, no lawyer. Just a man in a sharp dark suit, calmly flipping through a binder. A nameplate read, "Special Counsel for Civil Accountability, State of Idaho." Lynn leaned in, whispering, "What the hell is this?" Brent whispered back, "Not in the notes." The judge called order. Today's session, procedural review. The judge laid out the facts about conduct during the recent arrest on Madison Avenue. She stated Mr. Morrow would now serve in an advisory role with the state's Civil Accountability Office. Lynn's jaw twitched. Brent looked stunned, like a sudden blow had landed. Kenton never once looked their way. He leaned back as the judge summoned officers Halcroft and Mercer forward. Their steps were stiff, tense. They no longer held control. Every eye in the room was on them, but this wasn't respect. It was scrutiny. The judge asked, "Explain your reasoning behind detaining Mr. Morrow." Brent cleared his throat. Dispatch called in a black male wearing a navy jacket. He added Morrow had no prior record. The judge cut in. "No history in your department?" "Was his ID verified?" Lynn answered. "He matched the description and didn't comply with commands." Kenton didn't look up, but tapped his pen once, slow and deliberate. The judge faced him. "Mr. Morrow, any comments?" For the first time, Kenton fixed his gaze on them. "In my line of work," he said calmly, "I've read hundreds of reports, beginning with vague details and unchecked assumptions. Those patterns tell a story." Lynn tried to interrupt, but Kenton raised a finger, this time to the judge. "I motion to suspend direct testimony today. An internal review has been authorized. A hearing will be scheduled in 2 weeks." The courtroom fell silent. The judge nodded and approved the motion. Brent and Lynn exchanged no words, stepping back numb. Kenton closed his binder and stood quietly. No victory dance, just a presence heavier than any argument. As Kenton exited, the press surged forward. Brent's hands shook. Lynn whispered, "What is going on?" Deep down, they both knew. This wasn't a courtroom loss. It was the first move in a much bigger game. Kenton had flipped the board before Boise, before the suit, before the title. Kenton Morrow was just another kid from Bakersfield, trying to fly under the radar. His mom worked night shifts at Mercy Hospital. His dad? He painted houses and left behind nothing but smoke and silence. By the time Kenton was 12, he'd already figured out how to live 2 lives. One at school, where he nailed spelling bees and science fairs, and one outside, where he kept his head down whenever patrol cars rolled by. He wasn't loud or flashy, but he saw everything. Brent's hands trembled over the keyboard, hesitating for a full minute before opening a file. A 3-year-old stop involving Julian York. Pulled for a broken taillight, detained for noncompliance, charges dropped, body cam footage not uploaded. York's statement said he'd been slammed against his car after asking for a supervisor. Brent remembered the case, dimly, but painfully enough. He shut the file, chest tightening. A message pinged from Lynn. "They're gonna paint this as a pattern." Brent typed back, "Because it is." A pause followed before her reply. Lynn insisted they followed every protocol, but even her voice faltered now, because Kenton wasn't arriving with just a story. He was carrying proof. Brent and Lynn realized this was no simple cleanup. It was an autopsy of their actions. The hearing wasn't held at the precinct or courthouse, but in a bland municipal building off Fairview Avenue, a place where zoning meetings and forgotten city matters happen. Yet that gray-walled room buzzed with a strange energy. Brent Halcroft adjusted his tie 3 times before stepping inside. Lynn Mercer sat in the hallway, flipping through a thin folder she hadn't really looked at in 20 minutes. They weren't alone. At least a dozen people sat around the table. Legal observers, a city ethics board member, 2 from the state attorney's office. No uniforms, no familiar faces, no backup. Kenton Morrow sat at the head of the table. He didn't look angry, which would have been simpler. He looked ready. Mrs. Osai opened the hearing with a flat voice. "This is a formal review under Article 14. Officers Halcroft and Mercer are present. Allegations concern abuse of discretionary authority and repeated misapplication of procedural stops." She turned to Kenton. "Special Counsel Morrow, you have the floor." Kenton didn't raise his voice or lean forward. He opened his folder. "This won't be about accusations. It's about patterns." He placed a document on the table. Case 1. Julian York stopped for a broken taillight. Detained over 45 minutes. No charges filed. Report missing any body cam footage. Lynn cleared her throat, a hint of doubt creeping in. That was 3 years ago. Kenton didn't meet her gaze. Case 2. Alan Rivers. Matched a robbery suspect's description. Same precinct, same words in the report. Detained without probable cause. No charges. He slid a new sheet forward. Case 3. Same officers, same words. Fit the description. Suspicious. Non-compliant. Brent leaned in. "We answer calls. We don't control suspect descriptions." "You decide how long someone stays," Kenton replied. "And whether you check IDs or ask questions before assuming guilt. You choose your tone, your words. How many innocent people walk away bruised and unheard." He brought out a map with red pins showing every stop they'd made in 5 years. The pins weren't random. They clustered in certain neighborhoods. Kenton continued. "Compared to other patrols, you make 42% more stops. 80% target one demographic. 90% end with no charges." Ms. Osai spoke quietly. "That's not policing. That's profiling." Lynn's voice rose. "So we're on trial for doing our jobs? Responding, following protocol?" "You're not on trial," Kenton said, calm. "You're under review. Because this time, you stopped the wrong person. Not the usual suspect, not someone powerless, but me." He paused, letting that sink in. "I wasn't special that day. No badge. Just a man outside a bakery." Brent sighed through his nose. "We had a dispatch. We didn't target you." "You didn't have to," Kenton said. "You built a system where the targeting happens automatically." He scanned the room, then met their eyes. "You can't fix what you refuse to admit." The silence stretched, clinical and sharp. This wasn't revenge. It was truth. Every shortcut, every ignored complaint, every dismissive glance resurfaced. Because making the same call again and again stops being a mistake. It becomes your signature. By the second day of the review, Brent Halcroft was wearing thin. He showed up looking older, eyes dim, jaw clenched tight, posture rigid. He hardly spoke to Lynn, barely even glanced her way. She stayed calm, or at least she tried. Her defiance still intact, but her eyes scanning, watching too much. Kenton Morrow didn't arrive with fury or threats. He brought witnesses. One by one, they stepped forward. Julian York, the man from the taillight stop, told how he'd asked for a supervisor and ended up with a sprained wrist. He filed a complaint that vanished into silence. Ellen Rivers, mistaken for a robbery suspect while walking home with groceries, recalled being thrown to the ground in front of her silent daughter. Brent shifted uncomfortably. Not everyone came, but those who didn't shout or point fingers. They just told what happened. That made it worse. Brent and Lynn couldn't tear apart stories so straightforward, so real. Lynn folded her arms tight. We've seen the worst in people. We can't afford to hesitate when the facts line up. Kenton didn't respond right away. He studied her, like one inspects a fragile wall for cracks. Maybe the problem, he said slowly, is what you call a match. Brent's voice faltered. No one anticipated the ending. Not everyone would leave unchanged. Brent and Lynn sat side by side, uniforms still crisp, but their energy had drained. Brent stopped defending, his silence now loud. Lynn's arms folded tight, eyes forward, lips sealed. Not defiant, just stiff. Kenton Morrow stood and walked to the middle of the room, unaccompanied by lawyers or aides. Just him, carrying a worn folder. He placed it gently on the table. I've spoken what needs to be said, he opened. You've heard the victims. You've reviewed the reports, the footage, the language, the recurring phrases, the same tactics, the same individuals repeatedly stopped, questioned, cuffed, then quietly released. His eyes met Brent's. I don't think you joined this force with ill will, but somewhere you stopped self-scrutiny. You stopped seeing people, started seeing profiles. The room held its breath. I'm not here to ruin careers. This isn't justice. He faced the board. But the system won't heal if it shields failing patterns. My recommendation, Halcroft and Mercer be removed from active duty indefinitely. They need retraining, psychological assessment, and a departmental audit. Also, cases flagged must be reopened. Brent looked down, unflinching. Lynn whispered softly, It was a job. Kenton looked at her. Number, it's a responsibility. And when you forget that, people get hurt. The board went into a closed session. After 35 minutes, they came back with their decision. Brent Halcroft was suspended, stripped of his badge pending reassessment. Lynn Mercer was given the same fate. Neither of them spoke aloud. No dramatic exit. No slammed doors. Just two officers who had long believed their status made them untouchable. Kenton packed his things quietly. On the way out, he stopped by Brent's side. Brent looked up briefly. I never thought it would end like this. It didn't have to, Kenton said softly, then walked away. That evening, Brent packed his locker alone. Lynn never came. Rumors said she was on personal leave. No one reached out. The colleagues who once celebrated with them at retirements and banquets suddenly found other things to do. The precinct was already shrinking, glancing over its shoulder. A new poster went up near the squad room. Civil Accountability Hotline, confidential. A few rookies glanced at it longer than needed. The next morning, Kenton flew to Coeur d'Alene. Another city, another precinct, another quiet review. That was the work. Not for headlines, but for repair, truth, and structure. He didn't want applause. He just wanted the cracks in the system to stop hiding behind walls. Because when no one watches the watchers, the cycle keeps spinning. Now, finally, someone was watching. 2 months later, Boise was still shifting. The media had moved on. No protests, no viral headlines. But beneath the surface, something had changed. Those who paid attention could feel it. Kenton Morrow didn't stay. He was never meant to. His job was motion, city to city, case to case. never staying long enough to become part of the story. He wasn't looking for a pat on the back or a spotlight. He just wanted everyone to face consequences, not just the powerless. What happened didn't disappear when he left. The Boise precinct quietly updated their training manual. Not a big show, just enough to make a difference. Officers now had to watch real footage of stops that went wrong, not just staged videos. Kenton's case was part of that. New recruits got a new question in orientation. Have you ever messed up and learned from it? Not to shame, but to see if they could handle accountability before putting on a badge. Brent Halcroft took a quieter job in the city's vehicle impound. No gun, no loud talk about the hearing. Some said he was bitter. Others said maybe he finally started listening. Lynn Mercer didn't come back. Rumor had it she moved to Wyoming to be near her sister, deleted her social media, and dodged all interviews. She didn't argue with the board's decision, but she didn't accept it either. Some people who were stopped, cuffed, and humiliated got apologies. Not all, but a few. Julian York got a handwritten letter from the mayor's office. Eileen Rivers got a call from the city attorney offering mediation. No flashy headlines, just quiet signals that something had hit home. Most folks miss this part. Justice isn't always loud. Sometimes it's just someone finally paying attention. Someone in power getting asked to explain. Next time, maybe someone hesitates before treating a guy in a navy jacket like a suspect, before they treat a person like a problem. That day outside the bakery could have happened to anyone, but it happened to Kenton Morrow, a man who spent his life watching people get silenced. When it was his turn, he didn't yell or threaten. He showed them a mirror, and they had to look. The lesson isn't that Brent and Lynn were bad or unique. It's how easy it is to stop seeing people as people, and how dangerous that gets when that attitude wears a badge. Maybe, just maybe, some rookie with fresh boots and a clean badge will remember this next time they get a vague call. Maybe they'll pause, ask a question, check an ID before a cuff. Maybe that's enough to change one life, or more. Because change isn't always loud. Sometimes it just walks out of a courtroom with a folder full of names and makes sure it never happens again. If you believe stories like this should be told, if you think truth should make us uncomfortable enough to grow, subscribe. Every story is a step toward understanding. Let's not look away when it matters.